9/11 is related to just about everything else, particularly the war against Iraq. These two things have one aspect very much in common. They are both, in my opinion, treason. The cabal of neoconservatives at PNAC, I think you all know what that is, who planned this war, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Libby, Pearl, Jeb Bush, even before W became president. I don't say elected, I say became president. This cabal knew the American people would not stand for a war against Iraq unless there was, as they put it in their own document, a new Pearl Harbor. 9/11 supplied that.
In other words, 9/11 was a false flag operation. That's one term to describe an act carried out to make it appear it was done by someone else. Next, the man who's written the book on false flag operations. Webster Tarpley is an historian and journalist based in Washington, D.C. He has studied the dark world of intrigue, peopled by patsies, paid killers known as operators, and moles, government officials who flout their own country's laws. He made 2 presentations to the International Citizens Inquiry into 9/11. They are uncompromisingly titled The 9/11 Terror Fraud, a Coup Against Civilization.
Now here I would submit is a very important diagram that I commend to your attention, and I want to tarry and look at it for a moment. We are dealing with state-sponsored false flag terrorism. I don't mean state-sponsored in the sense that it has to be sponsored by the entire command structure of the country in question, but that it is carried forward by a private network ensconced and infesting decisive nodal points in the state apparatus of that country. I'll try to show you what I mean. Here we have to distinguish a world of patsies, the people that you hear about. I'll try to show you some of this in detail. The people we can call the dupes, the useful idiots, the fanatics, the police agents, the double agents, the provocateurs, in short, the Oswalds, the fall guys. Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm just a patsy, direct quote. That's one group. The moles. This is the group of government officials, the network of government officials whose loyalty is not to the command structure, the Constitution, or their country in some diffuse sense, but rather their loyalty goes to a private intelligence network, a private clique, faction, a group of putschists, if you will, people trying to have a coup d'etat. You also have to distinguish the professional killers. These are the cold-blooded technicians of murder. This is the sort of area where you see retired veterans of the Special Forces, the Delta Force, the CIA Operations Directorate, and so on down the line. The old boys. At the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, the term for this group in Washington was the asteroids. Finally, the corporate media. They are the indispensable ingredient, because without them you can't have anything. You have to have mass propaganda to accredit and spread and pound the official version of the events into the minds of people, and to smooth over the inevitable absurdities, contradictions, impossibilities, and so forth of the official story. Mass brainwashing in the Anglo-American tradition is what they propose.
You're watching The Great Conspiracy, the 9/11 news special you never saw. When we come back, the classic question. What did the president know about 9/11, and when did he know it?
When a competent observer looks for signs of despotism in a community, he looks beyond fine words and noble phrases.
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back to The Great Conspiracy, the 9/11 news special you never saw. What did George Bush know about the events of 9/11, and when did he know them? I'm not asking what George Bush, or Bill Clinton for that matter, knows or should have known in the weeks or years before based on this or that so-called intelligence report that he sees or should have seen about vague or not so vague alleged terrorist threats. No, my questions are much more restricted. I'm asking what specific advance information George W. Bush has about the first plane hitting the World Trade Center before it strikes. How does he get that information, and from whom? Why does he act as if he has far less information than the record shows he must have had? Initial news reports show the President informed of the gravity of the situation that morning. That famous whisper in the ear must be put into context. It takes place at 9:05. That's 1 hour and 5 minutes after the first hijacking. 45 minutes after the FAA is aware of multiple errant airliners. 20 minutes after the first aircraft smashes into the Trade Center. 18 minutes after CNN breaks into regular programming. In other words, a torrent of hot water churns under the bridge before whisper time. Researchers Jared Israel and Ilarion Bykov of EmperorsClothes.com write shortly after 9/11. The President of the United States travels with an entire staff, including the Secret Service, which is responsible for his safety. The members of this support team have the best communications equipment in the world. They maintain contact with, or can easily reach, Bush's cabinet, the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon, the FAA. Information concerning these alarming events must be shared with the President by his staff. Otherwise, they would be derelict in their duties. Not surprising, then, this report by ABC's John Cochran, traveling with the President, here speaking to Peter Jennings, not long after the President left his hotel. Peter, as you know, the President's down in Florida talking about education. He got out of his hotel suite this morning, was about to leave. Reporters saw the White House Chief of Staff, Andy Card, whisper into his ear. The reporter said to the President, "Do you know what's going on in New York?" He said he did. And he said he will have something about it later. His first event is in about half an hour at an elementary school in Sarasota, Florida. Something is very odd about the President's behavior. The President is aware, by his own words, that something serious is happening in New York. He additionally has to be aware of a great deal more about the situation. You have John Ashcroft later in the day at a press conference.
Immediately after the first report of a plane crashing into the World Trade Towers, numerous federal agencies coordinating with the White House mobilized their resources.
You have Vice President Dick Cheney, September 16th on NBC's Meet the Press. He tells host Tim Russert, the Secret Service has an arrangement with the FAA. They had open lines after the World Trade Center was... Then he stops himself. You have Laura Brown of the FAA. She attends hearings of the 9/11 Commission that bear on the aviation aspects of the day. Embarrassed by previous non-forthcoming testimony about the FAA's role, she sends an email in May of 2003 to members of the media whose business cards she had collected. Within minutes after the first aircraft hit the World Trade Center, she states in her email, the FAA immediately established several phone bridges that included FAA field facilities, the FAA Command Center, FAA Headquarters, DOD, the Secret Service, and other government agencies. The U.S. Air Force liaison to the FAA immediately joined the FAA Headquarters phone bridge and established contact with NORAD on a separate line. The FAA shared real-time information on the phone bridges about the unfolding events, including information about loss of communication with aircraft, loss of transponder signals, unauthorized changes in course, and other actions being taken by all the flights of interest, including Flight 77. So, in light of all this, here's the odd thing about George Bush's behavior. He and his staff could cancel or postpone an easily postponable photo op. But they don't. Why? On 9/11, Bush acts, and I emphasize acts, as if he doesn't know, as if he's not in touch, he proceeds with or feigns normality. Now to something else that's puzzling. At a town hall session in Orlando, Florida on December the 4th, 2001, here's the president's own account of the early morning of 9/11.
How did you feel when you heard about the terrorist attack?
Well, thank you, Jordan. Well, Jordan, you're not going to believe what state I was in when I heard about the terrorist attack. I was in Florida. And my chief of staff, Andy Card, well, actually, I was in a classroom talking about a reading program that works. And was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower of a TV. You know, the TV was obviously on.
The president tells us he sees, on an ordinary TV set outside a school classroom, the first plane hit the World Trade Center. He gives the oddly reinforcing detail that, quote, the TV was obviously on, unquote. He continues.
I used to fly myself, and I said, well, there's one terrible pilot. And it said it must have been a horrible accident. But I was whisked off there. I didn't have much time to think about it.
Didn't have time to think about it. As if his being told, time to meet the kids, Mr. President, stops all his thought processes concerning the remarkable image of what he's told us he's just seen on an ordinary TV, on top of all his knowledge of the unprecedented situation from earlier in the morning. But anyway, could George Bush have seen on ordinary TV the first plane hit the World Trade Center? No, he could not have. The footage of that first strike only shows up on television the next day, September the 12th, 2001. It was taken by a French documentary crew that happened to be in downtown New York. The Orlando Town Hall session takes place 7 weeks after 9/11, so it can be suggested Bush confuses the second plane with the first. But how to explain this? We've all seen Andy Card do that. None of this can ever be retracted. It is an interlocking historical record. Why go on at length about this? Because it may one day become the basis for criminal court proceedings. When we come back, is George Bush one of a group of conspirators involved with the attack? Welcome back to The Great Conspiracy, the 9/11 news special you never saw. George Bush is very convincing that he saw the first plane strike the World Trade Center the morning of 9/11 on regular TV. He provides supporting details, has repeated the story, and never retracted it. It has run on the White House website. Since he cannot have seen it on regular TV as he claims, it is not unreasonable to conclude that he sees the first plane on private, closed-circuit TV earlier that morning or in a private holding room later. Either way, I submit this could mean that someone had to arrange for cameras to be positioned and rolling to record the first plane strike. Those involved had to know precisely that the first plane was in the air, where and when the plane would hit. In other words, people closely associated with the President of the United States had very specific prior knowledge of the existence of the first plane, its destination, and its purpose. More clues. Bush's itinerary is well known. There are plenty of live news media reports concerning the President's whereabouts from the time he gets up that morning in his hotel until the time he arrives at Booker Elementary School, and how long it will take him to get there. Remember ABC's John Cochran and the half hour? Yet, the Secret Service, for at least a full half hour after he is notified that America is under attack, takes no steps to remove the President to safety. What happens instead? This footage also appears in Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 9/11. No one claims this footage is doctored. The President continues reading a story about a pet goat for at least 7 minutes. One columnist absurdly suggests that the president doesn't want to alarm the children. But could the president not have said, "Kids, I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself. There's some important business I have to attend to. You just carry on with your reading, you hear?" Any reasonable analysis suggests that the president and his handlers share sufficient real-time and prior knowledge of the unprecedented events of that day. The public record shows the president and his associates fail to act appropriately, that they in fact create a fiction and play act their assigned roles. This evidence alone constitutes grounds for proceeding with an indictment on charges of conspiracy to commit treason. But if, let's be dogged here, if the official story is true, and an astoundingly successful sneak attack from diabolical Muslims caught America totally off guard, then the White House surely must be highly motivated to turn heaven and earth, to use one of their own favorite cliches, to investigate the events of that day as quickly and thoroughly as possible. The White House must rush to appoint a respected chairman and commissioners, give them the widest powers to call witnesses, spare no expense. Except for the Reichstag fire, that's how it's usually done. 6 days after the sinking of the Titanic, a chairman is appointed to head an investigation. 9 days after Pearl Harbor, the first of 4 investigative commissions is struck. The JFK assassination, the Challenger disaster, 7 days each. How many days after 9/11 is it that President Bush names someone to head an investigation?
This commission has been charged with a crucial task.
Call it foot dragging. And then, who does Bush appoint? He appoints Henry Kissinger. Naming Kissinger sets a new standard for cynicism, or for being out of touch, or both. A New York Times editorial suggests the choice was to contain an investigation the White House long opposed. But Kissinger at least is an expert on the date September 11th. It was on that day in 1973 that the CIA-assisted overthrow of the democratically elected government of Chile takes place, masterminded by Kissinger for Richard Nixon. President Salvador Allende is murdered. In his 2001 book, The Trial of Henry Kissinger, Christopher Hitchens notes Kissinger as a crucial figure at all stages of this crime and cover-up. Now, this is in reference to a bloody and unnecessary Kissinger-driven episode in Indochina, which cost the lives of 64 U.S. servicemen. But it also sums up Kissinger's role in the bloody Chilean operation. The cover-up is as important as the crime. The White House tries to install Kissinger, an expert at cover-ups, to head the 9/11 investigation. After a universal backlash, Kissinger backs off. Bush then names, it's 431 days now, Thomas Kean and Lee Hamilton as co-chairmen. Kean's Azerbaijan oil connections and other conflicts of interest should make him ineligible from the outset. He earlier co-chairs the Homeland Security Project. Observers have noted that huge profits are to be made in the surveillance and security industries these days. The more alarmed the public, the bigger the profits.